Bobbie Lyons is a professional dog trainer and faculty member with the Karen Pryor Academy. She was on the creative team that built the University of Tennessee's certified canine fitness program. Bobbie has over 18 years' experience teaching canine fitness to pet and performance dogs around the world.
Welcome, Bobbie. I want to extend my appreciation and the Pet Summit group for you taking time today to share with all of our pet parents the information of what you have. It's really awesome. And I want to say, I first met you about 8 or 9 years ago when I went to Colorado to get my Fit Paws Master Trainer certification. And I was
Ah,
really impressed not only with your knowledge, but your interaction with all the different dogs. So when this opportunity came to me to be able to do this senior pet summit, like you were at the top of my list of people, because there's so much that really, really gets missed along the way with the exercise.
for sure.
So to begin with, let's talk about why exercise and fitness is so important to the senior dog.
Well, I think in general, most people they kind of sit back and allow their dogs to age instead of realizing that activity is really, really important to keeping them mobile, to keeping them injury free, pain free, all of those things. And I think a lot of dogs, they're also allowed to get a little squishy towards the later part of
Okay.
their life. And people don't realize that that's actually to the detriment of the dog. And so keeping them active and fit and their joints moving and everything is just so much better for them and they live longer, they're happier. They also like I said, they just don't have a lot more pain in their joints because they're moving. So just like with us, if we have arthritis, if we move those joints, they feel better. Same thing with dogs.
Yeah, keeping the circulation, the good things coming in, the bad things going out, keeping the stress
Absolutely.
down. So, with what you do, there's definitely appropriate exercise technique, and we've seen inappropriate. So, how would one of our pet parents, how would these pet parents know what's appropriate versus inappropriate? I mean, they have to start looking, but that's going to come once they have the awareness.
Sure, sure. I think I spend a lot of time with my clients in general is teaching them what to see. So I think one of the big things is just getting advice from somebody who is educated on canine fitness that can train you. Like I have a coaching program now, and the students that are in that program are just they're learning with leaps and bounds because they meet with me every week, and so we can make little tiny adjustments to the position and the posture, their position, the treat position, all of those things, as well as I think it's really important is to have some of the behaviors trained. And it doesn't have to be like you said, you came to the CCFT program and we talk a lot about training, all the targeting skills and all that stuff, which is all good. But a pet parent can get by with a few of those behaviors and not have to train all of them. I find that not all of my pet people want to be dog trainers. Um, so I find the best kind of group of behaviors that they can train that helps them do fitness easier and more efficiently. It's easier on the dog. The dog understands what they're going for. And so I think that largely people need to be aware that that there is a lot of dog training and fitness, and that they need to kind of embrace that part of it a little bit so that they are teaching the dog what he needs to know. Because if you are placing their feet on equipment, then the dog is not using their own body, their own muscles, their own neural pathway to get there.
Very good. And also, it's not like they're going to take their dog to this huge level where they have to learn how to do 20 different things. The
Sure,
dogs like repetition. So
sure.
maybe that for the senior, that a certain maybe 3 or 4 types of exercises
Mhm.
are selected out in training, and not that it's a difficult thing,
Sure.
that then they repeat those over and over
Yep.
to improve
Well,
the dog.
and maybe it's just about changing the weight distribution of that exercise. So maybe the dog learns to do a folding down, but then to make that harder, we elevate the front feet a little bit. Or maybe if we're working the front of the dog, we're elevating the rear feet so that there's more weight forward. So fitness in general is very much about where is the weight shifted on the dog, forward, back, side to side. So even if it's a sit stand, maybe it's a sit stand on the flat. Maybe it's a sit stand with their rear feet elevated. If we're working on shoulders, or maybe it's a sit stand with their front feet elevated, so we can work on the rear. So some of those just really basic behaviors, there's a lot you can do with them, as far as increasing the difficulty and the weight distribution.
So start off easy, and then you have gradients that is added in as that exercise becomes easier.
Yep, I generally start every client on the flat. I want the dog to understand how to fundamentally do the movement before I add difficulty. So the only exception to that is if a dog has a wide sit, for instance, I will put them on a platform to keep their feet their joints in alignment. So that when they're sit standing or down standing, they are doing it stacking their joints versus having their legs out wide.
So that is a part of their posture. And you mentioned that word earlier. So define for the pet parents who may be just now, maybe their dog has just hit senior, maybe it's their first dog, and they haven't really thought about exercise. And now they're thinking on what they're looking at. So define the word posture.
So I first look at posture in a stand. So if you are looking at your dog from the side, I basically want the front feet to be straight down from the shoulders and their rear feet to be straight down from like the base of the tail. Um, and I want the back to be reasonably flat. So some breeds have a little bit of a slope, and that's okay, but most dogs can get a pretty flat back. Um, if they're all roached up, oftentimes they're just not standing right. So teaching them how to stand is very, very beneficial. In a sit, I'm always looking at, are the knees level? Like if I were to put a board across there, slide it in, would the board sit flat on their knees? That's kind of the analogy I give my clients. Because we want that sit to be square. So we want the rear feet to come in right in behind the front feet. And we want the back flat is all relative to posture. So if the dog has shorter legs and a longer back, their back is going to be rounded, and that's perfectly normal. So I don't look at the back position as much initially, just because it's all structure related. But same thing in the down, I'm always looking for, do they down in a straight line? Is their spine straight when they go down? Are their knees level? Oftentimes when dogs have something wonky going on, they kind of go down at a curve. And that's usually a red flag for me that there's something going on. But usually there's other signs, they're not sitting square, or they're sitting off to one hip, or, it all kind of goes together. So usually if there's something off in one posture position, there's something off in the other two as well.
So why would it be bad for them to, so there's some breeds that just because like a corgi, they do that pig sit thing kind of off to one side. But in general, why is that a problem?
So it just depends. So like if you're looking at alignment, when the dog is in a sphinx down position, so like your cat position, um, you want everything to be in alignment and everything straight. If it's not, it is generally some sort of indication that something is bothering the dog. Now, I do work with a lot of performance people who train kind of that shift to the hip, relax position. And if your dog has been trained to that, that's not the down I'm talking about. I'm talking about that kind of ready to go, ready to spring out of action down. So that down really can show us a lot about the alignment from shoulders to hips, and even knees and elbows and everything. So if you are getting something that is off to the side, it usually means that there's some discomfort, or I'll even say the word pain. I know a lot of people who have dogs in pain don't really think that it's pain, but it is. Um, and so just like if you had I don't know, say your hip was bothering you, when you're sitting, you're going to offload that hip, or when you're standing, you're going to offload to try to move away from that pain. And our dogs do the same thing. It can be something as simple as, I don't know, they stub their toe, or it can be a knee injury. That's why you need to have that looked at if you see some consistent change in posture.
And sometimes it can be something that had happened prior that maybe existed for a while, and then that was their compensatory position. And then because of sitting distorted, now they have not equality of muscle length.
Mhm.
Some have shortened, some have
Yep.
gotten too long. And so it inhibits their ability to be able to put that neutral squared position because it's just not in their toolbox anymore to do it
Right.
that way. But you can
Right.
bring them from this other position into a more stable sit down that is balanced, that is comfortable. Even though they're older, you can rehab that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Sometimes, especially after a dog has had an injury, um, they have 4 legs, but I've seen a good fair amount of dogs who don't really need 1 leg. Like, if it's bothering them, they'll just be like, "Bah, I just won't use that, it's fine."
The little ones. The littler they are,
Right?
that
They're like, "I don't really need that, it's
that's
fine."
okay. Yeah, it slows
Yeah.
you down. Let me down.
So, the big thing there is convincing the dog that they can, because it's not painful anymore. So, I do find that to be true. Once a behavior or a movement is practiced a lot, just that compensatory movement, and it's practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced, it's very difficult to get out of that movement. I can use myself as an example. I had a knee injury, and every time I went downstairs or like tried to kneel on the ground, I was like, "That's gonna hurt." And so I put my body in more of a tense um, position, like, ready for it
Your
to hurt.
expectation.
Um, and then I was actually causing myself to make it hurt by the way I was trying to make it not hurt, if that makes
Mm.
a weird sort of sense. But as soon as I started just going, "It's gonna be fine," and I just did it, didn't hurt at all.
So
So, and I think
that's
that the
good.
dogs are very similar to that in that once something hurts, it's very difficult sometimes for them to be convinced that it doesn't hurt and it's fine. And so doing some fitness exercises and moving those joints through range of motion helps them understand, oh, I can do that and it doesn't hurt. And so so doing that is very, very, very important after injury. I get stuck a little bit with dogs that have had like knee surgery, for instance, and maybe they had knee surgery a year ago, and they're still not gaining muscle in that leg and still not using it appropriately because they never got past the "that's going to hurt" stage. And so that's really where fitness comes in, is helping those dogs build those muscles and not injure the other leg or shoulder by compensating.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I did my practice has been total rehab since 2001. And the exercise is such a part in getting to those dogs early and being able to initiate that, let's use this a little bit to where they don't get stuck in that stagnant position.
Right.
Another one you talked about too was that roaching you call, where their
Yep.
back has that arch to it. And this is one of the positions that dogs develop as they become seniors,
Yep.
especially where they have restriction of comfort and movement in the hip area.
Yep.
So they begin to stand under themselves.
Yep.
Their legs come in.
The opposite of a stop sign.
That
Yeah.
that back to round. But
Yeah.
and then that becomes the vicious cycle. The more they walk like that, then they begin scooting instead of picking their feet up.
Yep.
And then they stumble and fall. And it becomes a very difficult scenario, which ages them faster.
Yeah. Well, because they're stuck in that posture where they can't move their legs very good. And they're trying to hold everything through their back. Um, yeah, and it's one of those things. Like, I work with a lot of dogs that kind of have that posture initially, actually, because they've been rewarded for it. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
Like, because when we train things, we don't always think about what does that overall behavior should look like. If we're training a sit, we're just training that the butt is hitting the ground. If we train the dog to stand, we're just training that they're on all 4 feet, right? And so I spend a lot of time actually helping the dog understand that stand means something different than what they thought it did.
Hmm.
And so sometimes that's important too, is just recognizing what has the dog been trained to do, And then looking at how does that correlate to good posture.
Right. And realistically, I think the majority of the pet parents, unless they've already been trained properly, they don't really realize that there's a difference between a sit and there is a good type of sit. And so increasing their ability to observe and then pay attention to what it is their dog's doing. I
Absolutely.
know when I first did, this is years and years ago, back when I had my first corgi puppy,
Aw.
as an adult, took her to
Mhm.
dog classes and they did the teach you sit, teach you stand, but there was not specifics like we learned in Fit Paws about this is the posture you want. And
Right.
then recently I was looking at a place to board my dog and there were people like they dropped off their dogs for the day. And then there were trainers there doing the training. And then I guess they
Mhm.
get back with, and I'm just kind of watching that and I'm seeing dogs that are the trainers were not trained to observe that this dog actually was limping. This one wasn't sitting right. This one was
Right.
echoing. I'm looking at that and I'm going, whoa, there's so much more to it.
Especially as a rehab vet, you're like horrified when you walk in there.
Yeah. One of those, like, I don't know if I should say anything or keep my mouth shut, but I feel bad for the dog that's being allowed to do that when it's not helping it.
Right. Well, and like I said, I think what people don't focus on a lot is um, what is practiced or rewarded is what becomes normal for the dog, right? And so if we're not paying attention to some of those things, um, then we do end up with dogs that are, putting more pressure on their knees and their hips in their sit, or they're not standing correctly. And some of them I have noticed, like I've had a few in here that where I've noticed that once they learn, you can almost see this sigh of relief when they start to realize, oh, this is how I'm supposed to stand. And wow, that takes the pressure off my shoulders and my hips. And it's so much better. And the dog can't tell you that, but you can see softening in their face, and they will tell you that it is more comfortable. But if you don't know what you're looking for, and don't know how to train it, um, then that becomes tricky, right? So then you just need to seek somebody out that can help you with that.
So when the pet parents are initiating these exercise programs now, what would be some of the things that that they need to, what do they need to watch out for when they're exercising? Like, how much is too much? When would they know that, hey, it's time to back off?
Generally, as soon as you start to see signs of fatigue, I usually say that's when you need to be done, no matter where you are um, in your fitness workout. So, signs of fatigue come in many different colors, we'll say. It can be as simple as refusing to do the exercise. The one that is near and dear to my heart is they could do it in the proper position before, and now they can't. Um, and I usually give them, I kind of have that, you get two tries and you're out kind of thing. I will try it two times. If two times in a row they can't do the exercise in the correct position, then I'm like, all right, you're too tired.
Mhm.
So then we just move on. But I think that what often happens is that, or people even seeing this might get online and go, oh, okay, I'm excited. Let's do some canine fitness. And they go online and they look at the pretty exercises on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. And you can really throw your dog under the bus if you do too much too fast. So I would say if you do that, pick one or two exercises, but really pay attention to posture, and don't try to do too much too fast, because imagine that you haven't been to a gym in a year and you run off and you're excited, you're like, do this workout, and then you cannot walk the next day. That's exactly what will happen to your dog.
Yeah, and it's always the day after.
Yeah, it's
After
like
I'm like,
within
it's
2 days.
fucking
Yeah.
work. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing too is into that point where you're talking about the fatigue and watching them is that they don't think, okay, this is how much we can do,
Mhm.
that every day they need to reassess because emotionally for a senior dog, like
Yep.
say one that's afraid of thunderstorms, if you'd had a bad storm or firework and they got themselves all ramped up with that, that is going to exhaust them. And
Sure.
even though the pet parent could say, well, we haven't exercised, you should be fine because we took a day off. But
Right.
other energies can deplete them too. So they have to
Absolutely.
look at the overall picture of what all have we done and what's happened when they start thinking, like you said, oh, is fatigue coming?
So, and that can be like on a day like that, it just could be like what I call an active rest day, which is you still go for a walk or, if you live on property, a jaunt around property, or whatever, but not just sitting like a couch potato, but still get out and walk. But maybe not do organized fitness on a day where your dog is more fatigued. And in general, I think that one of the things that people don't recognize is that fitness is really a 3 to 5 days a week. Um, most of my clients, I want to say they consistently do fitness exercises 3 days a week. Some of them will bump to 4 every now and then my really go getters do 5 days a week. But for the most part, it doesn't have to be done every day. And it doesn't even have to be done more than 3 days a week. As long as the dog is getting a regular walk the rest of the time, organized fitness can just be a few days a week. Um, so because you also want to make sure that they have time for mental and physical recovery. So if you overload the muscles too much, then you actually lend more towards injury. So you want to make sure that you're not asking too much of the dog.
Well, I think that point right there is probably a relief for a lot of those watching today to hear is that we can just do this 3 times a week, and I'm a good pet parent, and we'll make some
Yep.
progress. So the
Yep.
answer is yes.
Yep.
Way cool. So these things that we're pointing out, what are some other factors, reasons why this is important information for the senior dog parent to know about?
Well, I think that I think it really depends um on the pet parent and what they like to do with their dogs. But I think that a lot of people are pretty active. At least nowadays, I feel like a lot of pet people are active and they want to have their dogs still be able to do active things with them, go camping, go hiking, go, um, whatever. But not be chained to the house and to a bed because they're arthritic and can't move or whatever. They want to be able to take their dog and do something with them. And so I think that keeping them active and moving is really the key to that. I have dogs that I work with that are, 15 years old and still going strong. But they've been doing fitness with me since they were young.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
that's key too, starting it out earlier and keeping it going.
right, developing that neural pathway with a young dog is really a huge advantage. But I really don't subscribe to that old adage of you can't teach new dog or old dogs new tricks, um, because you really can. And honestly, they really like it.
Mm.
Older dogs love to learn. Just many of them haven't been taught how. And so sometimes you just need to give them a little push and you would be surprised at how much they love doing fitness. And part of it is that they want to do something with you. And part of it is that fitness is generally a high rate of reinforcement. So they like snacks.
That's right. That's one part of it. We have motivation. Well, that was the thing about the Fit Paws compared to some other dog training that I had been involved with before was that it was fun. And that's what I would tell my clients when I referred them to go. My technician trained also with that. And so
Mhm.
it was handy for me because then I would just send them to Robin to do their
Right.
programs. And they said, this is not work. You're not going to be abusive. There's
Right.
no jerking around. It's fun. It's
Mhm.
fun for you, it's fun for the dog, and it's a win-win everybody. It's like they're so happy.
Yep, they are. And so many of my pet parents are like, I can't even walk by the equipment that's on the floor because they'll go stand on it and like request to work out.
Let's do something.
Yeah. And
Right,
so,
you gotta give 'em
yeah,
credit
so
for that.
I always tell them, you can put it away or something, but I find also that having the equipment out helps you remember to do it. So,
That's true too. Right, don't hide it. So mentioning equipment, and there may be some folks that are more on a budget, and
sure.
I know, like, there's a lot of fun things, and they're bright colored and that they can buy, But is that always necessary, or would they have things at home that you can incorporate to help them as their budget, they can advance as it allows?
Yep. I actually work with clients every day that don't have any equipment. Equipment for me a lot of times is more about elevation than instability. So so really working with weight shifting. So you can use stools at home. I actually love people who have like a gliding rocking chair and a small dog because I can teach them to balance
Oh,
while you move the rocking chair. Um I have had dogs, push office chairs. I have had, um I do a lot of things with 2x4s,
mhm.
and small platforms that can be easily made, cinder blocks, yoga blocks, um, human fitness equipment that somebody might have around, like an aerobic step is gold in the dog fitness world.
The things you find in yard sales too.
Yeah, the things you
Sometimes
find in yard sales or
months
something you
after
picked up.
January.
Yeah, something you picked up for your New Year's resolution that didn't work for you will probably work for your dog. Another thing that I use a lot with puppies and older dogs is twin size inflatable like camping mattresses
Oh,
because they're cheap and also you have a lot of room for changing the air. So if we need instability to help that dog find balance, then oftentimes I will use that if they don't have equipment. So then I can put front feet up, I can put rear feet on it, I can put all 4 feet on it. They can do down stands or circles or whatever. I just want to make sure that before you add instability, that the dog is understanding of the exercise or the movement that we're asking for. Because if you throw them into instability too quickly, then we end up with compensatory movement, and that's not what we want.
yeah, they have to be comfortable with their balance
Sure.
on stable, dry land, as we would
Yep.
say,
Yep.
before they have to know that they're okay, that they're not gonna fall before they move to elevating or other
Right.
motions to another gradient. So
Well,
when
I mean, it's sort of a good analogy. Like my mom gets seasick, right? So, um, so if you think about it from a standpoint of they have to be able to find their balance and do the thing on the flat before you put them in motion, you don't want to cause them to be so discombobulated on the balance equipment that they can't find balance because that's inefficient as far as getting them to figure out how to move. So we want to make sure that they really understand it first. And then I generally tell people they have to understand it on the flat, then elevate front feet and do the same thing, and then elevate rear feet and do the same thing, and then elevate front and rear feet all on something stable, and then move to balance equipment. And they might not need it.
mhm, yeah, but, with the seniors, better to take it slow and easy and check off every little box than to
Yep.
jump ahead, and then you got an oops, and now you're behind the 8 ball.
Well, and yes, and also, I think we should talk about a little bit is like as seniors age, oftentimes they throw more weight forward, right? So they have 60% of their body weight forward and 40% in the rear all the time. But as they age, oftentimes they become more dependent on their front and less dependent on their rear, which causes that muscle loss that lots of people talk about. But I'm here to tell you in my experience that muscle loss does not have to be a what happens when your dog ages. If you keep your dog active, they won't lose as much muscle. And I think that I have had 12-year-old dogs that have gained muscle, and I've had 12-year-old dogs that maintained muscle. And so genetics plays a huge part in, whether they can gain muscle or maintain at certain ages.
So, that's a really good point, that not to just assume that because they've lost the muscle tone and they're skinny and old, that they're gonna stay that way, that you can do things that help
Yes,
them to become strong again, and I've seen that too.
absolutely.
We were talking a little bit earlier about things that people may have at home, and one of those could be a treadmill. So, what is your approach to, discussing, utilizing with your clients that you have a treadmill, and so tell us about the differences, what's safe, what's not safe, if it's okay, not okay, what to look
Sure.
for,
So like a human treadmill
whatever it is.
or dog treadmill?
Right,
It
we know
depends
what's
on
better, but they might have a human treadmill, and they may only have a 12-pound dog on a human treadmill versus their 90-pound dog on a human treadmill.
right.
Because
So the treadmill, the biggest issue with treadmills, well, the two biggest issues with treadmills is that a human treadmill is um often not long enough for a lot of dogs. So when a human walks on a treadmill, they hit the same spot every time. We like literally travel in the same spot, right? When a dog walks on a treadmill, they move forward and back and side to side. So they need a little bit of extra room, or it will shorten their stride. And what we don't want is for their stride to be shortened, because that can cause injury. It can cause discomfort in the back. It can cause lots of things. So we want to make sure that whatever they're trotting on, it is long enough. I have dog tread treadmills, but dog tread doesn't exist anymore. There's dog pacer. There's a few of them out there, but they are becoming a little bit harder to come by, I think, than they used to be. I think, Ava, do you have a dog treadmill at your
yeah,
place?
I didn't realize they weren't. Robin has it that
Oh,
she
okay.
utilizes because I had moved from Missouri to Arizona now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not the, huge practice that I was before. So Robin
Right.
continues to do that, and she has that, and I didn't even realize that they weren't, in business any longer.
Yeah, dog tread doesn't exist anymore, so I'm gonna be real sad when mine break.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough that you asked this question, because I was just at that dilemma, because I have a little 14-pound dog and I have two giant dog treads for my border collie and my Aussie, and I wanted something for my little dog. So I actually bought an under the desk treadmill, so that you would, that I can use while I'm online. But also she can use because she's only this big. The other thing that I like about the under the desk treadmill is that it doesn't have anything over the top of it. So some dogs don't care. You could put, say a Cocker Spaniel on a human treadmill and they would trot all day, no problem. But some dogs, they slink down because there's something over the top of them. So if that's something that your dog does, I would say human treadmill is probably not a great option, or switching to something that doesn't have anything over the top.
So the sides, you're saying because the sides go up higher for the people, and then they see
The
that?
sides and the display,
Oh, okay, the
you know.
display in front,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like something
Yeah.
coming down towards them.
Yeah,
Like
there's
top.
just something over the top of them. Some dogs just behaviorally just can't handle anything over the top. But some dogs are fine. Like I have two little dogs at home, and one of them could trot on my treadmill that I have at home all day long. Like I can literally leave him there and go have a sandwich. He's happy as a clam to be on the treadmill, but he's only, 13 pounds, so he's fine. And he doesn't seem to be bothered by the piece that's overhead. But it's I think the other thing that we should say about this is that dogs are not, you shouldn't run on a treadmill. They should walk or trot. So nothing higher than regular trotting speed, which for most dogs is less than 5 miles an hour.
They can sure keep that trot going for a long time before they have to break into a run.
Yeah, it depends on who's running the treadmill.
They can do that trot really, really well.
Yes. But I think a lot of times what happens with treadmills is that, there's a good way and a bad way to introduce a dog to a treadmill. And I think that people get stuck and don't really know what speeds they're supposed to be at. So, if anybody is watching and you have tried to put your dog on the treadmill, if your dog jumps off all the time, it might be that you just haven't sped it up enough. Like if you keep them in kind of a weird gait where they're like in a transition gait, it's not comfortable for them, so they usually bail. And people are usually afraid of speed. And so I would say that in general, 1.8 miles an hour is a walking speed, and a trotting speed for, say, like a 25-pound dog is about 3.2 to 3.5 miles an hour. And for your average, 45-pound border collie, trotting is 3.8 to say 4.5. And those are really, pretty standard. But it's always about watching, what is the dog actually doing? Like I honestly had a Ridgeback who's a big dog, that could trot on the treadmill at 3.2 miles an hour, and I was amazed.
Yeah.
Because my border collie can't do it.
Right.
But they're special.
Going. Right. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, let's dive deeper into exercise and fitness for
Yep.
these seniors. Why is this so important for the longevity of our senior dogs? What are all those wins that the pet parents can have by initiating exercise fitness programs that are under the supervision, at least for starters, of somebody with the training like what you had?
Well, I think it's really just like with us, the more active we are, the stronger we are, and the more we are able to keep ourselves healthy, right? I think that dogs are no different. They need activity in their life. They need to be challenged. They need to move. They need to really embrace life, I guess, rather than watching it go by.
That's good. Yeah.
So I think that again, we go back to all of the same other things that we've already talked about, like improving their posture, improving their, the way their body feels, making sure that they don't have pain, and that they are not sedimentary. So being really, really immobile is not good for the joints. It's not good for the body. And it's definitely not putting more air into their lungs. It's not, feeding their body the way it needs to. So again, just very similar to us, we need all those things too. And like I can tell you from experience, the more I sit in this chair, the more my joints are not happy.
And the other thing too is that when you put all those good points together and then the dog's coming along and doing better, the parent feels better about it. And then it's time that the two of them can spend together
Right.
working towards positive goals.
And it doesn't have to be like an hour workout. It can be something that can be done in 15 minutes,
Yeah.
3 times a week, 3 to 5 times a week.
That's so
So, and that 15 minutes is, again, just like you said, time spent with your dog. Your dog is being mentally and physically challenged. They're moving through joint cycles. They're doing all of the things that they need to do to be able to keep moving well.
So, what would be some of the things that you've seen the pet parents mistakes? What would be, we want to try to avoid the oopses. What would be some of those mistakes that you've seen over the years that we would want to put caution out so that people don't do that?
Definitely putting dogs on equipment, on balance equipment before they're ready.
Mhm.
And also not looking at basic things, like say the behavior is a sit and find balance on anything. They're not looking at how the dog is sitting, so that's actually putting pressure on the dog's knees. If they're sitting with their knees out wide, I have seen um, trotting cavalettis with too high poles because they had a dog that had an injury and they went to rehab, and it was about walking over Hawk Heights poles, and then they went to trotting, and now they're teaching the dog more of a hackney gait.
Mm.
Um, Instead of that nice fluid long stride, they're actually shortening the dog's stride and making it lift their feet higher. So those are probably some of the big ones that I see, is just if or sit pretty is a big one in the pet world, to teach their dog to beg. And a lot of those dogs end up with back problems because the position is wrong, and it's asked for a lot. It's a repetitive motion that the dog has in its life.
Speaking of those repetitive motions too, and equipment that people may have are the weave poles.
Mhm.
And they're spaced the same for every dog. There's not a consideration of the length that that body has to extend its curve through.
Yep.
So pulling some of those poles out, maybe you have them and it's okay to weave this older dog, but don't expect him to do the tight give him some more distance in
Sure.
between
Yep.
the body curvatures.
Yep. And like I said, I think that other things that that fitness does, um, just because it came to my mind right now, I just
Mhm.
wanted to touch on it, was lots of people want their dog to be able to jump in and out of the car, or to get on and off a bed. Those things, those are all things that fitness can help with. There's also good and safe ways to do that, that usually, if you're involved in fitness, you'll get some advice on that. I like the assisted jump, um, in and out of a car or on and off a bed with a harness, um, in general, for all dogs, because it takes the pressure off their shoulders, and they don't have to push so hard with their rear. And they're also often going into a small area,
Mm.
and so it's tricky for them. Although they can do it and they'll do it 1,000 times, it's a lot of wear and tear on their body. So, but I do believe in assisted. So if you just have your dog in a harness and you kind of give them a boost, that works much better than many dogs, especially older dogs, especially pet dogs, don't like to be like held and picked up and put somewhere. And so the lesser of those two evils is to offer an assist, but the stronger that they are, the less you have to assist.
I'm really glad you thought about that because that is something that people are I mean, everybody goes somewhere. The dog
Yep.
likes to go somewhere. They've been used to sleeping with them. Now they can't navigate so well. So having that harness that they put on when they're traveling or when
Yep.
it's going to be doesn't mean that they have to sleep in the harness,
Mhm.
just that you have it to use and then take it off and let the rest of their body breathe.
Sure. Sure.
That's really good. Any other points you can think of that have come to mind that we haven't talked about that you wanted to make sure and focus on during our talk today?
I don't think so. I think we covered most of it. I think the big thing is that people need to realize that what you can do,
There's a lot.
that there's a lot you can do. Yeah.
Well, I thought, and speaking of what you do, I had been on your website like years ago. And so I refreshed in my mind. I went to your website and it's been updated and changed. And you have a lot of information there for people. I'm going, what's she up to these days? And it is amazing all that you have. So how would people get in touch with you? What's the best connections?
Well, two ways. I have two websites. I have positive-performance.com, which is spelled with PAW instead of POS. That gives you some general information about fitness. It if you want to sign up for private lessons, things like that, tells you where to reach me. You can also reach me on Facebook, Instagram, all of those things. And then I have an online platform for classes, which is BobbieLyonsCanineCampus.com. And for pet parents, the best classes there are the Cavaletti class and the foundation class. Foundation class is basically everything on the flat. There's no equipment except maybe a platform in that class. And then Cavaletti's, is one of my favorite senior dog activities, actually, is putting poles at different ways and having the dogs walk through them. Sometimes they're bending, sometimes they're just high stepping. It just depends, but there's a lot of variety in that class. Those two classes would probably be the best classes for pet parents. Um, Whereas some of my other classes are more focused on agility and other things.
So the Pet Summit is all over the world. This program goes out to people everywhere, and they
Yep.
can then go to your site and then sign up for those
Yep.
classes via
Yep.
that way, and then like they interact with you and then work with their
Yep.
dog.
Yep. And so there's classes where you post video and I review the video and give you feedback. And I do that. I'm using a program called Loom where I can talk right over the video and draw lines and,
Oh, cool.
show you things. And then the other thing is I do offer one-on-one coaching through Zoom. And I have a coaching program that has a high level of support, or I have one where you just meet once a month and I design a plan for your dog, you do the plan, you come back. And I have clients all over the world in that program, so it's just a matter of finding a time where I'm awake and you're awake.
That is so cool. Well,
So,
thank you, Bobby, for sharing your expertise, the time today to
you're
get
welcome.
more of this valuable information out for those senior dogs all over the world. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.